All right, boys, let's go.
So, Cheech, I couldn't help but notice you've got a little bit of a glow about you. You were looking a little dour, a little pale the last couple weeks, but you do seem to be in a better place.
By pale, you mean miserable?
I do.
All right,
I do.
yeah, because that
Pallid,
would be accurate.
I guess, yeah.
And finally, got out and did some fishing, and it was a productive trip. We caught fish. Should have probably had at least a baker's dozen, but they were so small that they couldn't even eat a Ron's like a real tuna fish. So, we had a lot of short bites and came back with some folded into a pretzel because they couldn't just, suck it in and keep swimming like tunas usually eat the Ron's. But the jig bite was great. I mean, I started off with like a bunch of different jigs tied on. Different colors, different profiles. They were the deep force, smaller one in green. I had a shimmer fall, which the Shimano shimmer fall is one of my favorite jigs. Some Nomad streakers tied on. I want to say that was it. Maybe even one of the Jigging World sand deals. So like we started with metals, and we were southwest of the gully. And
yeah, you're fishing with Jonah Olson and Ty Rainey, and of course Kevin Blakeoff from the office here went with you as well.
Yeah, so Ty pointed his 27 conch out that way. We left out of Falmouth Harbor, and we stopped well shy of the fleet. We kind of started really in tight, like by the mud hole, and worked our way south, which was some intel that we were given by somebody that you just do what they tell you to do. And actually, we didn't really see much life. We saw some porpoises, and then we saw the chicks on slicks, and we started targeting that. And it wasn't long till Kevin hooked a fish, which was kind of funny because I thought we had doubled up. Next thing you know, there's a tuna fish right in front of me, like 6 cranks after I thought I hooked my own fish. It ended up being Kevin's fish with 2 jigs in its mouth. So that was pretty wild. At first, we thought the tuna ate the jig, but I think it just took a zip line straight down Kevin's line, right to the other corner of his mouth, which made for a pretty funny picture.
It's pretty wild, man, that it worked out. I mean, sometimes I've seen that vertical jigging lake trout where if you tangle, because we've done that. I've done that with Chris. He's tangled me, I've tangled him, but it works as a de-hooker. Like the metal slides down the line and just pops the hook right out. So fortunately, you guys got to land that fish. That kind of was the theme of, I'd say, the last week on the Midshore grounds. Going all the way down to New Jersey, there was a big influx of small bluefin that people were catching on the jigs this week. And by small, I'm talking fish from, I heard some as small as 20 inches off New Jersey. The majority of the fish you guys were seeing, and that I heard of in that kind of, south of Block Island, south of the Vineyard grounds, those fish were in the 30 to, I'd say, 40-inch range. And you guys were actually measuring those fish because
we were doing some science, Jim.
Tell us about your science.
I'm a learned man of the seas, and we were doing some science. We had Dr. Walt Gillette on our podcast a few months ago and learned a lot about what they're, tasked with, the great strides they've made. It goes back, I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's a reason why there's so many tuna fish right now. So among his research projects, he's trying to get kind of map out tuna family trees. Yep. So he's asking recreational fishermen. Close kin recapture.
That's right. Yep.
So essentially what they're looking to the recreational sport fishing community to help them with is getting samples of the juvies. This is a giants to juvies program. Obviously, it's not hard to get DNA samples from giants. Those fish go to market, and they really need the recreational participants in the fishery to get them fin clips of smaller fish. Whether you harvest these fish or release them, that is DNA that... It's so simple. You get a kit. It has everything in it. Has an awesome tape, a pair of scissors, basically the paperwork that you need, and 15 vials that have solution already in them. So all you do is you catch your fish. If you're going to harvest it, you harvest it. You clip off a little bit of the finlet, like the size of a push pin, and toss it into the vial, shake it up, disinfect the scissors so that you don't, contaminate the next sample. And you just keep going on fishing. So we kept 2, we released 2, and I got 4 vials filled, and I got 11 more to go.
Good. Hopefully you can fill them, and hopefully I can get out there and help you fill out those vials. So that's those were some fish in the mid 30-inch range. I remember the video we just posted on the Water's Instagram. That was a 34-inch fish.
Yep.
Curved fork length. So a lot of tuna that size, which is a great light tackle size.
Oh, so much fun. You could do it on bass gear even, but that would be the time you hook a giant, of course.
So that, going down, starting the report in New Jersey, before I go a little bit further south, that was what I heard from Jack at Fisherman Supply, that there was an influx of some smaller tuna. I even saw that on Instagram, some people reporting that down there. They still have the larger fish off Jersey, and this is kind of on the midshore, inshore type grounds where it's the Razor Wreck, Little Italy, which is your favorite spot that you've never been to, and it's been predominantly a troll bite, so they're catching them. They said the smaller fish are hitting wide trackers and spreader bars. The larger fish, if you want a shot at tuna up to say 70 inches, 75 inches, that's going to be on ballyhoo. So okay. Ballyhoo fish further back for those, and then they are getting some on the jigs, dead stick bronze, and is getting a couple other fish.
Well, before we go any further, I want to kick it to the sponsors. The Northeast Offshore Report is brought to you by Sirius XM Marine. Fish mapping is Sirius XM Marine's most comprehensive plan and is available on your boat's display and includes access on your phone or tablet via the fish mapping app. Sirius anglers use every advantage available, and Sirius XM marks the spots where bait fish gather and game fish hunt. Learn more at SiriusXM.com/fish mapping. Also sponsoring is Garmin Marine. Check out the Panoptix PS70 stainless steel through-hull transducer. It's powered by Garmin's rapid return sonar, which gives you live sonar up to 1,000 feet below the surface. See fish live, catch fish deep. www.garmin.com. And last but not least, the Canyon Runner, who you'll hear from a little later with their typical report they do such a great job with. So thanks to the sponsors, and kicking it back to you, Jim. What else you been hearing down that way?
So big money tournament happening in the Mid-Atlantic this week with the White Marlin Open. That just started on Monday. Mm-hmm. Not the best weather to be dealing with that this week, but
seems to be a theme.
Right now, there's a boat. Two boats have weighed in tuna. There were 10 tuna weighed in throughout the course of yesterday so far. Now it's early. There's a $4 million tuna and a $2 million tuna, and I know those guys would not mind the weather kicking up. Plenty of white marlin caught yesterday with 111 white marlin releases,
wow.
15 blue marlin releases. And I know one white marlin was brought back to the scale, but it ended up being 2 inches too short to qualify. So that is still up for grabs. That's where the big money is in the White Marlin Open, is catching the largest white marlin. So
it started off kind of slow on the billfish side of things, and now it's quickly become like one of the better billfish years in recent memory, which is it's pretty awesome to see. It's good to have that variety in our offshore fishery.
You told me you saw some hammerheads. You bartered for some live eels.
Yeah, so we were out there with on-the-water friendly Kevin Gould, good friend of both of ours, and we kind of talked about this going in. I was either going to push into the dump after getting on these smaller fish to try to find some overs or some big yellowfin, which there were rumors of both actually that day out that way. So that was option one, if you will, and then option two, I kind of floated amongst the people aboard the boat, and the consensus was, let's go looking for whitey. So that was Kevin Gould's plan, and he had been talking about getting us out and doing some sight fishing for them. We haven't been able to make that happen, but I called him in on kind of a bite. He was, had some slow fishing. It was kind of spread out, but it was, I guess a pick. Some of the guys trolling out there were putting up some pretty big numbers. So the fish were willing to come up. I tried throwing the popper a little bit, but it really wasn't until we switched over to the Rons and started getting a lot of bites. And what we were doing is literally just reading and reacting. We were looking around and being like, all right, there's a small slick developing there, and there's tuna chicks kind of piled up on them. We'd get downwind or downdrift of that, little slick, and it would get bigger as you approached it, and that's when you'd get your bites. And when we moved on from the Rons, because as soon as Kevin hooked one on his Rons, we also kind of switched over, and I went back to the metal, and I was looking at the sonar as I was jigging, and you could see a consistent, couple fish on the bottom tight, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to pound the bottom. And I grabbed one of the new UVT jigs that they were nice enough to send us a care package on. Group of guys out of Connecticut manufacturing these jigs. They looked awesome. I never was a big dressed stinger hook guy, and you had told me that the guys down in Jersey love it. I just kind of let it go to work as is, right out of the package, and I was pounding like, maybe 10 cranks off the bottom and letting it right back down. And I hooked like 2 fish on back-to-back drifts, and everyone switched over to the UVTs. Then you started hearing guys in the fleet saying, hey, UVTs are the ticket. They were getting a lot of bites that day out there. So
talking to Kevin about that, getting the report from him as well, he said it sounded like maybe the bite was picking up as you guys were getting ready to go.
Yeah, I think
like
so.
You guys were cleaning the boat, getting ready for the maybe look for some white marlin, and you picked those 2 fish off right in a row. And I don't know if that was the kind of the late morning slack where things had happened. Or,
it was, actually.
And then, so maybe it was a little bit of a later bite. So the boats, because we did hear some pretty good numbers. The boats got, there were boats that were finding.
Got some numbers.
And I think it was a bit further west of you. That was the kind of report, New York report I heard was that plenty of those small bluefin off Montauk. So, south of Montauk, south of Long Island. So they're getting those small ones. And that's where you hear guys talking about, caught, hooked 20, landed 16. So guys that did some pretty big numbers. Still, any tuna he gets a good day. But
I was talking to Captain Joe Diorio, I think Sunday, and his boat did, I think, 15 of those small bluefin in an hour and a half.
So that's a real concentrated window there.
But west of him, like off of Montauk, like, further west of him by not far, a lot of where that activity where the canyon runner is going to kind of fill you in on, that had a mix of everything. It had those small fish where you could target numbers. There were giants doing their thing and giant fishermen getting on those fish. But, Captain Steve Hernandez was catching Allison yellowfin in the mix. That guy is always, he's always pulling tricks out of his hat. When everyone else is doing one thing, he's doing it at a bigger and better level right next to you. Saw some really big yellowfin. He said he was inside of land, which is just awesome. So hopefully those fish kind of fill into water's a little easier reach for guys like you and I, Jim.
Yeah, talking about the tournament and the canyons and big yellowfin, it sounds like the big game battle on Nantucket happened. Now, they were hit with some bad weather over the weekend. I know some boats that went there and fished and then ended up calling it early because they weren't. If you wanted to catch some fish that were going to put you in the money, you had to go way east. You weren't going to get it done in Atlantis or Beach. From what I heard, the boats were heading all the way out. I don't know if anybody went out to Munson, but they went out to some of those farther east canyons like Oceanographers. And that is where the life was. That's where the big eye were. That's where the big yellowfin were. That's where the billfish were. But if you didn't have the boat to make it, or you didn't want to go and get your fillings knocked loose on the ride back, then you were fishing closer to home and didn't really have a shot at compared, based on what was happening out there. So a little bit of a tougher tournament there. Canyon-wise, though, it sounds like, again, if you can make the long run east, you're going to be rewarded for it.
Moving things around the hook, I have not heard much east. It's been spotty at best. It's been kind of oddly quiet.
I think there's, there's fish out there. There's plenty of mackerel. There's plenty of sand eels. Guys are catching, but I think that there is, it's being overshadowed by what's happening elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And what's happening elsewhere is, just a little bit of appreciation for the lowly Menhaden has created some incredible giant tuna fishing happening in Cape Cod Bay, all the way on up to Boston, all the way on up to Maine. Big concentrations of bunker are putting giant bluefin tuna in places where you really wouldn't even expect to see them.
Yeah, you were out in that mix filming a Striper episode with the On the Water TV crew with Chris Megan, and you guys had a run-in with a big old bluefin, huh?
Yeah, so we had heard about it. So Brian Coombs has been talking about running into while he's on his Striper charters, he's been bringing some big heavy tuna popping setups just in case he runs into them, gets a shot. We were out there just live lining bunker, having a great day catching stripers. And, man, we were inside the harbor. So we were in 30 feet of water. And I just happened to be looking in the right direction, saw, clear as day, there's a giant bluefin tuna, just crashes on the surface, blows a bunch of bunker out ahead of him. He came up one more time. And I thought, well, wasn't that neat? I'm glad I got to see one. A couple minutes later, Alex Blackwell, our creative director here at On the Water, we'd caught enough stripers at that point that
the camera guy could fish.
Yeah, the guys we're putting the cameras down, we're taking the fishing rods out, and just having fun. And all of a sudden, he'd struggled to hook. He'd missed a bunch of stripers on the bunker. Finally, gets a good eat, hooks up. They do that big arc when they don't run directly away from you. So for about a half maybe 30 seconds, you're like, this is a really big bass. And then as soon as that fish got down current of us, it just took off. Like all of a sudden, you've got the Saragossa 5000, which is way too small for a fish that size. It's just melting line off there. And
that's not a bass.
Yeah, we knew it wasn't a striper. It was that tuna we were seeing. So that was very cool.
Very cool. I checked in with Connor over at Monahan's Marine. They're out of Weymouth, and he said, he's pretty plugged in well outside of like that, South Shore Stellwagen area. He said the edge has been pretty much the same as we've heard. Pound the pavement. Troll's been kind of slow, but out of the handful of big eyes still being caught, they've been studs. They've been big fish, which is pretty cool. Plymouth to Duxbury, the pogie feeds have been going off. They've had giants on them. They've had commercial-sized fish on them. Middlebank had a ton of life. The backside didn't have much life at all, which means the next time you can get out to the backside, it will probably be good, because that's been kind of 2 bad days, 1 good day. And there's been a lot of bait on the bank. The concentration of pogies, however, inshore seem to be pulling a lot of that tuna life tight to structure, tight to shore, while they're still being fish caught in the usual deeper haunts. And that was my Thursday morning. I had an opportunity to shoot out at first light in the dark, actually well into the dark, so that we could have bait for first light, and we went and tried to look for those pogie feeds. We started kind of at Fish and Ledge, like right in the bay, right near that weather buoy that's there, and then we got a video of 3 or 4 tuna blowing up on pogie schools, like real tight to land. So we shot in to like the White Cliffs, Plymouth area, and I'm like, all right, see some birds, don't see any bait. I'm like, this kind of looks good. And then we're finding out that in like 30 to 40 feet of water is where it was happening. Now, we had pea soup fog, didn't really have good visibility, but it kind of blew my mind. Like, it went against everything in my DNA to like go in where you bass fish in 30 feet of water and expect to hook a giant. So we kind of stayed in that 90 foot when the thought process was, is these fish might come in and rip through those schools, but they're not hanging out there all morning. You know what I mean? They're kind of like ripping through them and moving out. So we just kind of set up.
Going in and eating their fill, man. That's the magic of Menhaden. I mean, you see all the humpback whales in shallow water. We saw a bunch of minkies in Boston Harbor. Like, that is all because there are big schools of bunker that are there and pulling these fish in there. It is a big, easy meal, high-calorie meal for them. And, man, that tuna is perfectly comfortable in 40 feet of water if he's got a whole big all-you-can-eat buffet of bunker right there with him. So that was some of those videos I saw were pretty incredible. Alex Ridgway, I know, was we're
gonna I'm gonna go to the socials to wrap this thing up at the end, and you'll get a little bit of that juice.
Yeah. So go ahead. You want to do that now?
Keep moving. I'm gonna keep moving. A little further north. I talked to Captain Bob from Seacoast, New Hampshire, sport fishing, and he said after what's been a prolonged pick. That I've been reporting through him on this weekly report, the bluefin bite broke wide open today, and that was yesterday. Almost all the rye boats caught. A few were back by noon. Jeffrey's, a broad swath of it, was also lights out, and let's hope it stays that way. He said prior, so like going into the weekend and the end of last week, covered nearly 70 miles on Friday. Scantum, the Curl, Pigeon Hill, Southern Jeffries, finally marked a few off a Hampton Ledge, but no bites. Had a big poor beagle bite a dogfish we were bringing up, caught both of those. Blue Dog's in the mix now. Saturday, we released a 75-inch fish on stand-up at Boone Island. Mackerel in 100 feet of water. Lots of life there. Wreck fish scarce right now. And that kind of wraps up everything I have. So I think it's a good time to kick it over to the Canyon Runner guys and have them run you through the report that they cover so well. So take it away, Canyon Runner.
All right, on the water. Jimmy and Cheech, how we doing? All right, let's start off this week, see what the fishing was. There's some interesting action went on. From the ridiculous, this is sublime. The ridiculous is this trip out here. Look at this. This one gentleman was about 150 miles east of Nantucket. Why was he there? Because we always follow the water. We've got water coming in. The reason we're going to mention this water is it was lights out fishing. There are other boats out here fishing it. But this water is coming our way, and it's going to get closer and more realistic for everybody else. Great trip. Steamed out there 3 days. There's plenty of fish in this water. You keep your eye on it now going forward. Now, getting back to reality, there was water all in here on the edge, but what's sublime is the fact that if you zoom in, you're going to see action that was very close to the beach, sometimes within sight of the beach up here off of Montauk. You can notice there's very little out this way. What we're looking at is the Ranger to the inner butterfish hole, all this area, very good schoolie bluefin action. As the week went on, they came even closer because up in this area, this stuff is all the giant tuna fishing going on. But now the schoolies are mixing with the giants up in this area. And considering the weather we were fighting last week and this week, the fact that we can fish so close is allowing guys to have some trips. Unfortunately, while there was some good fishing in the dump much earlier last week, it dried up. And there really isn't anything going on tuna-wise south of the islands. There is some good news, though. The good news is the white marlin are snapping. For anyone who does any of that, the white marlin have showed up south of the islands. You can get them casting to them, and that starts to be good fishing. You just work out here on the 30-fathom line. There's good white action. But unfortunately, the boats coming from this way, Regal Sword, pretty quiet. South here, pretty quiet for tunas. But you have the white marlin to deal with. You got to come all the way to the west. And you have fish, very good, like I said, inner butterfish hole. That's what this area is. To the Ranger. The Coimbra, not even at the Coimbra. It's actually like 8 to 10 miles inshore of the Coimbra. Plenty of fish. As you come further west, you can see track lines like right up here. There were giant bluefins, well, 60-inch to 95-inch bluefins all in this area where all these little dots are. The fish were right up that close, and a little spice of the action, cobia. There's plenty of cobia in this area. Now that's giant. So look, they're tough to catch, and we'll have 30 boats go out there on a day, and there'll be 3 fish caught. That's about average. But work down here, this is the Little Italy. I'll zoom out, look at the NOAA charts. That is the Little Italy area. In between the lanes, the shipping lanes, you'll see it as we zoom in. As we zoom in, you could see this is an area called the separation zone, the pink area in your NOAA charts. In this area, you could see all the action. The constant, everyone's going basically start at the bottom. There's a buoy down here. You work all the way up, zigzagging back and forth. You come all the way up to the beginning of the channel, right in the separation zone all around here. There was the bigger bluefin, some occasional small ones. However, towards the end of the week, as you can see, this is called Little Italy. You can't see it right now. We take off all the track lines. You'll see it in a second. This is an area called Little Italy. That's the Humpty Dumpty. In this area right here, we've had a lot of schoolie bluefin action. You can see boats are out there right now. Boats are catching anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 a trip. Better schoolie action off of Long Island. Over here, we had guys catch 5 to 20 a trip in these areas. But the nice thing about here, again, we've been dealing with this persistent southwest. You can see the arrows. This is a southwest blow. These arrows right here are the wind. The wind's been persistent. But if it's blowing southwest 15 or 20, this is only about 15 miles off the beach. It's not the nicest of days, but it's doable. As we move down the beach, unfortunately, out here, you notice not a lot of activity. There's no fish. You notice out in the canyons, there wasn't a lot of activity. We had Captain Mark DeCavey on the Rebel sneak out. Got all, 2 days ago on Saturday, got out, fish starting to dip, saw very little, trolled all the way this way, got a big eye. Basically, it's 3 bites the whole trip, long trip, 1 big eye, 1 dolphin, 1 yellowfin. Not great action here. As you move down the line, the water that we talked about last week that produced some tremendous catches in the Toms and Linnecall area, that water's now slid down. We had some tremendous catches this week between this is the Spencer and the Wilmington. A lot of good action in here. Then the wind blew really hard. No one's really been able to get out. And then south of this area, again, it's been a dead zone in the canyon for all these places. On the only positive side, the marlin fishing. It is still probably one of the better marlin years, but we've kind of been in the beginning of it. Now, the White Marlin Open starts. This is the beginning of what is considered the best marlin fishing for the next 6 to 8 weeks. We'll see what happens. Unfortunately, you slide back inshore. You southern folks, you've had a tough year. We'll all have a tough year with the weather, but The only shining light down here now is a lot of mahi-mahi. On the cigar, on some of the other lumps, you find any pots, there's mahi-mahis in this area, and the wahoos are starting to show up. We're at the turning point of the year. This is really, we're through half the season. We've had a really tough weather season. The fish are scattered. Certain areas haven't done anything. Certain areas have done great. But traditionally, folks, we're getting into the best time of the season. We're looking forward to potentially what's going to be a great September and October, and we're in a transition time too. We get through a little bit of weather. We should start to see things change and have a lot more action with yellowfin coming up. At least that's a hope. Folks, I hope you do well. Talk to you next week. Take care.
So it looks like there were some fish out there in Munson, which one of these days I'm going to get out there and fish it. It seems like it is right on the edge of what's reasonable for a canyon trip, maybe a little bit beyond reasonable.
158 miles is a haul.
Yeah, but if from some of the reports you hear out there, it's worth it. Every time I've heard somebody going, of course, if you're going to run that far, you're probably not going to make your report real public. So I only ever hear the reports of people going to Munson.
Why not? Why wouldn't you? It's like I'm one of very few boats that can get out here, so have at it.
But anyhow, that was the Canyon Runner Fishing Report. They are here to help you catch fish. They offer coaching and concierge services and that virtual captain system that you just got a preview of. And that's going to exponentially help you increase your catches inshore, midshore, and in the canyons. It serves as your co-captain, providing all the fish catching and safety intel, plus a built-in warning system. It gives you the ability to track over 400 member boats and 15 pro staff boats in real time, which is a way to take your network and just multiply it across that whole Canyon Runner virtual captain team. So pretty cool stuff right there. Great to keep you in the loop on what's happening, in addition to our report right here.
What's ahead, Jim? What do you get your eyes on going forward?
Oh, well, this always jinxes it, but we're supposed to fish Thursday, which will be tomorrow, the day after this report comes out, with Captain Rob Taylor. I have told him to reserve me a spot on the boat. I know you had a trip with some friends going. You had one extra spot, and I have glommed onto it like a remora on the
you
on the
and
side
I
of
are
the whale shark.
the only people on that boat that have caught a tuna before. So that experience will be welcome. This is a virgin's trip.
We will see how it goes. The weather is looking right on the edge there. I know we've got some tropical storm stuff happening in the mid-Atlantic. So we'll see. I don't know if it's – I feel like it's 50-50 at this point. We'll hear from the captain probably Wednesday. And
it doesn't sound like the type of trip you want to bring 4 people that have never caught a tuna on.
This is a
it does sell.
This is going to be a get your teeth kicked in and maybe catch a tuna kind of trip. But if we set the expectations, low expectations, high hopes.
Yeah,
how's that
I'm just
sound?
going to assume that we're not going to go. And then if we do go, I'll be ecstatic. But, I mean and – our fearless leader, Chris Megan, seems to be finally getting a case of FOMO and talking about, making a run offshore, which is, I welcome it. I've been floating out. We didn't even talk about this. There's been some great white marlin activity, kind of in that break right along the shoals through the wind farm that is in Gordon's Gully in the Owl area. That's worth checking out if you have an opportunity. I know that a boat out of Falmouth Harbor got on some fish and brought a live well full of live porgy or scup. And did well. They had at least 3.
It seems like it's a tough thing to add on to a tuna trip. It seems like you've got to go out of your way. You need a dedicated trip to do it.
That.
I do. I want to too. But if you're going to burn some fuel and maybe see it. It's a high risk, high reward type of fishery.
There's some tunas in there too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I heard that from good old Willie Hatch that there was some tunas in there.
I'm hoping the yellowfin fishing's kind of gone quiet. For a little bit. I know they're seeing them in canyons. They're getting some on the flats at Tom's Canyon on poppers and jigs. But what started out as a really promising yellowfin tuna run has really fizzled, and we're not seeing them midshore here so much. You talked about Steve Fernandez getting on them. But by and large, they've evaded the big fleets unless you're going out to the canyon. So,
well, if you run it back to the probably the first report of 2024 that we did, I remember the Canyon Runner saying that they were worried about the yellowfin fishery for 2024 and not seeing what they like to see further down south off of the Carolinas and stuff with the yellow fishing. It kind of gave them, kind of some dim outlook on 2024. And I hope that changes because I love yellowfin. I mean, I actually like eating them better. than bluefin.
They're better eating. I still feel like bluefin are more of our tuna. Bluefin are just they're right up there with stripe bass for me.
Once I get my fill of catching bluefin, which it's an endless cup, right? It's good to have a change of pace with yellowfin. They're fat guy friendly. They don't fight as hard for as long as bluefin do.
Dude, that's a matter of debate. Like I would love to put in the comments if you think yellowfin or bluefin fight harder. From the people I've asked who've caught big versions of both species, they say yellowfin fight harder. I hate to it. It's like the home team. Bluefin feel like the home team because they come inshore. They're in 30 feet of water. You know, they're the north. I know they come from the Mediterranean. They're everyone's tuna, but they really feel like New England and Northeast tuna. Yeah. But enough about that. We said we were going to do less of this. Try to keep the report shorter this week, and we've failed. But that's all right. You're going to wrap this up with your social report of the week. Social media.
I am. We all could use a little break from the weather. It's real tough times we're living through right now between the constant wind and the Great Depression that we're living through. It's tough times to be alive. But I'll leave you guys with...
Are you talking about the stock market?
No. All right, when do you want to go there? I'm going to leave you with the social call out. This is going out to Captain Alex Ridgway from Cape Cod Offshore. He's quietly been on some solid offshore jig bites and topwater feeds pretty regularly. No surprise there at all. He's had several fish on the Siren Antidote 130 Elixir stick bait. Many of those July fish have come without a crowd around, which kudos to him for keeping that quiet. But lately he's been on the latest trend in fishing, in bluefin fishing, and been kind of hanging out with those pokey blitzes. They've posted some awesome footage. We know that's been happening from P-Town along the South Shore coastline, all the way up to the North Shore behind Graves Light, etc.
All the way down to Jersey.
Yeah, it's been awesome. So he posted some absolute juice that we'll leave you with the two posts from this past week. Kind of a collaboration between Cape Cod Offshore, which is at Cape Cod Offshore 23 is Alex Ridgway, and henry.gone.fishing. They posted some absolute inshore Pogie Blitz fire. So we'll let you check that out and catch up back with us next week. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this week's report.